Since the first of the year, we have looked back at Nauvoo after Joseph Smith's death. We've examined the history of Emma Smith, Joseph Smith's first wife, their children, and then looked at a theory of what guided the man the LDS still refer to as the prophet. All of this, we believe, added to pieces of the prophet puzzle, but we're going to leave Joseph Smith behind now. His death initiated a transition of Nauvoo Mormonism to another home, a home far away and completely isolated at the time, Utah. Such isolation allowed its new leader to rule and reign with bloody fists of iron. We mentioned back in January that after some campaigning for the office of prophet, Brigham Young took over as head of the church and began to lead the Mormons to the promised land in the West. In many ways, what was initiated in Nauvoo by Joseph Smith by ways of plural marriage, despotic, violent rule, secrecy, and theocratic domination, this was exacerbated and fully enforced by Brigham Young and those who supported his reign. Understand, Utah was chosen as the place to go well before Brigham or anybody else made one step toward the West. The story you get as a member makes you believe that they were kind of wandering like the children of Israel to some unknown place, and they came out to the Utah Valley, and the Spirit told Brigham that this was the place. But that's just not so. They knew it was going to be the Salt Lake Valley, and Brigham took them to it, and when they arrived, his actual words were, "This is the right place." Prior to leaving Nauvoo, Brigham Young initiated what would become standard operating procedures in Utah, something known as his theocratic ethics. Part of these ethics included the fact that Mormons considered it okay to steal from non-Mormons. Now understand, I'm not making this stuff up, and I'm not suggesting that it's the general practice of the LDS people today. But what I am saying is this is the soil upon which Mormonism rests today. At the time, 8 out of the 14 issues of the Warsaw Signal, the newspaper for the area, was about Mormon stealing, or what they called Mormon thievery, in the post-Joseph Nauvoo years. Church historian D. Michael Quinn reports in his book, The Mormon Hierarchy, page 637, that Joseph Smith told Porter Rockwell that it was right to steal, meaning from non-Mormons or Gentiles. Orson Hyde explained that a saint could, quote, steal and be influenced by the Spirit to do it, end quote, so long as the theft was against a non-Mormon. In his personal journal, John Benyon recorded that, quote, Orson Hyde said that he would never institute a trial against a brother for stealing from the Gentiles, end quote. But stealing from the Gentiles was just the tip of the gun barrel. Nauvoo henchmen at the time, who served as the police force, carried out vicious beatings, intimidating assaults, and even many murders. According to a Nauvoo policeman whose name was Alan Stout's own narrative, these acts were done to avenge the blood of Joseph and Hiram. He wrote, quote, I hope to avenge their blood, but if I do not, I will teach my children to never cease to try to avenge their blood, and then teach their children and children's children to the 4th generation, as long as there is one descendant of the murderers of Joseph upon the earth, end quote. And Jesus said what about revenge? And Alan Stout had a brother whose name was Hosea Stout. And Hosea was the chief of police in Nauvoo and one of Brigham Young's avenging angels. In his personal diary, I think that was a purposeful, in his personal diary, Hosea wrote that he sought, quote, to rid ourselves of traitors who are in our midst, and that he preferred the direct approach of, quote, cutting him off behind the ears according to the law of God, end quote. This was a direct reference to the LDS temple instructions on how to take a person's life. I suggest that this spirit continues to reside in the hearts of many LDS men and even women today. It's not by chance that when the U.S. Supreme Court in 1977 ruled that capital punishment was not cruel and unusual, that Utah was the first state in the Union to execute someone. Gary Gilmore, they did it by firing squad so as to shed his own blood in order that he himself may atone for his unforgivable sins, which Mormons believe the blood of Jesus could not do. Amazing, huh? Now, these violent actions in Nauvoo were primarily carried out by a group of men collectively known as Danites. We have some pictures of some Danites, and we're going to play a little game here. We're going to show you 4 pictures. 3 of them were Mormon Danites. 1 of them is not. Can you guess? Play at home. Let's show the pictures on the screen. Quiet, audience. All right, there we go. Now, these guys, let's show them again. I'll tell you their names. This one is Porter Rockwell, Joseph Smith's childhood friend. Joseph Smith promised him that if he never cut his hair, he wouldn't be killed, and he never did. He was known as the Avenging Angel or Angel of Death. He killed many men. He was a ruthless killer, and he came out here to Utah and continued on his henchman activities for Brigham Young. The next picture, this is Alan Stout. I can't remember if this is Alan or Hosea. And he was the either the one of the policemen in Nauvoo or the actual head of the Nauvoo Police Department. Next one. This is Kevin Kennington, and he tried to look as evil as possible, and I think he succeeded. And he's a friend of mine. He's a good brother in the Lord, and he loves the Lord greatly. I wish we'd get his face on here smiling. You like him a lot better. He's not a Danite. And this was either Hosea. I think this one is Hosea. And he was a bloody butcher as well. Bottom line, these men were ruthless murderers who would and did almost anything Brigham Young told them to do, both in Nauvoo and in Utah. I absolutely believe, and strong as this is to say, that where Cain christened the fallen world with all its dark principalities and powers by shedding the blood of his own brother, I believe it was by Mormonism christened itself by the same means over and over again over 150 years ago. Porter Rockwell is known to have killed several anti-Mormons. The first known victim was one Frank Worrell, who was one of the jailhouse guards at Carthage when Joseph was killed. According to History of the Church, Volume 7, page 446 through 447, Rockwell shot him dead with a bullet to the stomach. And according to ex-LDS author D. Michael Quinn's research, he then murdered 4 more non-Mormon men at Highland Ranch, Illinois later on the same day. Quinn reports many, many more. There was a guy named McBracking who, after they shot him, they had his throat cut ear to ear. This was temple stuff. Was stabbed through the heart, had an ear removed, and was horribly mutilated, it says, in other parts of his body, meaning he was castrated. Other men like Lambert Symes, Phineas Wilcox, and Andrew Dubenhire disappeared without a trace, and it was well known, well believed that they were taken and butchered too. When one Irving Hodge was found at Brigham Young's doorstep, stabbed to death 4 times by Bowie knife, Young said in his Sunday sermon from the pulpit, quote, "I don't know nor care who killed him, for if he lived, he would have added sin to sin. There are other men in Nauvoo that I pray God they run against the same snag that Irving Hodge did." And Jesus said, "Love those that hate you. Do good to them that despitefully use you. As I have loved you, love one another." To keep order and instill fear in the hearts of anyone who dared cross them, these men flogged, whipped, stoned, and beat people without a single sign of remorse or restraint. But It was the murder of Frank Worrell that sealed the Mormons' fate in Nauvoo and sent them packing off to Utah. Because of the murder of Worrell, the Quincy Signal headlines read, quote, murder of one of our best men. To arms, to arms. This was a response to the theocratic ethics, the lawlessness, and the continued wars between the saints and those who did persecute them. As a result, Brigham Young wrote a public statement in September of 1845, which read, "We propose to leave this county next spring." He continued, listen to this, "We will go to a land where there are at least no old settlers to quarrel with us. We will leave this wicked nation to themselves, for they have rejected the gospel, and I hope and pray that the wicked will kill one another and save us the trouble of doing it." End quote. This is a direct quote from the journal of LDS prophet Heber C. Kimball. Murder, revenge, bloodshed, and violence was at the very heart of the man who settled Utah Mormonism. For Joseph, it was deception. For Brigham, it was murder. The very drive, the mentality, the ideation has not in the end really changed. From the tree falls the fruit. From the fruit falls the seed. From the seed grows a tree, and so on, and so on, and so on. The movement west began in the spring of 1846. We'll pick up here next week and talk about that.